Salutations from space, folks. Top of the morning to you. Happy New Year. A blessed Epiphany. Feliz Tres Reyes and whatnot. The Three Kings. The Belt Stars of Orion. Or Tres Reyes, this today's January 7th, actually. Yesterday was January 6th, 2016. It's the first time I used that year date in a present tense sentence. Fascinating. The big book doesn't really say anything about them being kings. They're about there being three of them. So this thing's a great mystery, and that's not really what I sat down to speak about this morning. But I am, I hope, heading to Santa Cruz, California today to meet with Miss Marya Stark, and perhaps we can record together some storytelling of the 12 days of Christmas and such, because those mysteries are intriguing and more the further you dive into them. In corporate consumerism, Christmas, as it is in modern times, or at least promoted to be, the 12 days of Christmas lead up to unwrapping the gifts and such, But really, old school, it actually begins on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve and runs until Epiphany, January 6th, typically celebrated these days, and that's the celebration of the Magi, the magicians, coming to see the sun. Or a baptism, it's pretty strange, but in the curriculum of current religiosity, if you will, there's kind of a different celebration for each day of the 12. Not just like 8 maids a milking and 12 drummers drumming and such, but a different ceremony for a different saint or whatever. And January 1st, obviously when we now begin the year, is a celebration, frankly, to the goddess, because it's for Mary, or for the Virgin. So we begin the birth of our year in celebration of the womb, of the feminine. Isn't that something? And I've been tripping this week on how we begin in the darkness, right? Starting this calendar year in January, and it's very similar to why do we start our days at midnight. You ever thought about that? Isn't that kind of a trip, right? So many of the ancient systems, like if you look into Mayan calendar studies or whatever, you're going to see that the day begins at sunrise. Makes sense. And the year begins at vernal equinox, spring equinox, which is the resurrection, Easter in modern parlance. Coming out of the cave, the days begin growing longer than the nights. It's like a sunrise, but on a yearly level. Just as autumn equinox, the other time of balance, is like twilight or sunset. It's really incredible actually to dive into an honoring of the annual circle, maybe even the 12 archetypes, and compressing them down into one day and seeing how they unfold in life in a kind of a narrower lens. If you do so right now, it's kind of like half past Taurus. So what is it that we begin in the darkness? We begin at midnight and also begin this calendar year basically at annual midnight. Well, in so many senses, that is the beginning. That is the birth of the sun. Yeah? It hasn't come out of the womb yet. That would be sunrise. That would be spring. But it's on its way up, Midnight, the sun's furthest, low down in the roots of the earth on the other side. Opposite of noon, obviously. But just think about, what happens at winter solstice. Capricorn, the goat, climbing up the hill, the goat does, right? So it's about to make its way until sunrise. And if we think of that as then spring equinox, well, now it turns into this ram. Climbs a little faster, perhaps. Oh, the mysteries. And January 6th is special to me, not just because of Epiphany or whatever, but that's kind of my my rebirth date, my sober date. I'm 4 years in now. It was 2012. So I just figured this out this morning. I guess I'm a Capricorn. Holy smokes. And yet I guess not. Because I'm so disorganized. I mean, what am I even talking about here? Hopefully this cup of tea can remind me. Right, we're here to speak about Venus and the Venus gate, the goddess's descent into the solar plexus. Here's an image I took this morning, and here's a few actually. This is Venus and Saturn and the Crescent Moon. So a few different images. I extended my stay in California to catch a glimpse of this. And then big rain came, and El Nino's flexing his muscles. And thankfully here in California it's been bone dry. It's really nice to see some rain, but I felt like I was going to be praying to the planets through a whole bunch of clouds, Seattle style. And I was very happy that they cleared. I kind of woke up naturally and peeked my face out the window, and this was happening, so I got to get outside and spend some time and ask and give, as I do. And I really asked for some support in many things, but one was to get a little more active with the sharings for this Venus group again. It's been a little while. I've kind of been in my winter cave, as we should be at this time, right? But there's like a couple interviews I've conducted that I'm still working on editing, and it's been longer than I would like, and I'm just kind of ready to get back after it. So we'll see if that's true. And I always give when I ask, to receive from the guides, from the great guides and guidesses. So let's look at this astrologically. This is the chart for this morning, January 7th. I ran this in Seattle, though right now I'm in Monterey at my mom's house. This is Venus and Saturn and the moon. Yeah, and so together they huddled up in the sign of Sagittarius. Now you can see that the moon was not so exact with Venus. We can see that pretty easily in these photos, right? The exact conjunction of moon and Venus, and therefore signaling the gate of Inanna's descent. She had been in the heart chakra since December 7th and now January 6th, moving down into the solar plexus. And we're going to rap about that a little bit. But here is the time of the exact Moon-Venus conjunction on Epiphany on January 6th, 2016. With all the doves and the drummers and the maids of milking, and what else do you have in that scene? 5 golden rings. 5 golden rings is pretty interesting. I'm seeing like Olympic symbology in that. But also the 5, this image of the 5-petaled rose, or the pentagram. Yeah, this 5-petaled flower that Venus and Earth and Sun form every 8 years, every 13 Venus years. Yeah, this beautiful sacred geometry. And so we celebrate Venus, and this is a lot of what I really want to bring forth. In fact, my study personally, and one of the reasons why I've kind of been missing in action, is because I've opened a, formal study of sacred geometry. I had a meditation retreat in a hexagon center a while ago, a beautiful hexagon room, and I was spending the nights in there. And I woke up and I was like, I don't really know so much about the hexagon, which was so funny because last month when this happened, it was all about Venus's descent through the heart chakra and clearing the clutter of the heart chakra. And the heart chakra, let's dig into that, you know, is this hexagon. You know, we see this as maybe the Star of David. You might know that as the Seal of Solomon. Star tetrahedron would be it as like a three-dimensional form. Merkaba, some have expressed this as, but you know, the upward facing triangle and the downward facing triangle coming together. And you know, really, it's this, and this has kind of been my study recently. These are the 4 alchemical triangles, right? So earth and air, earth and water, the 2 chalices, the downward pointing triangles, and air and fire, the 2 blades, the upward pointing triangles of the alchemical tradition. You know, and I often wondered why it's divided here. I mean, you can kind of see that, like, you know, illuminated eye dollar bill strangeness in that division. And it seemed to me that, well, maybe you would want to divide it in the middle or divide it more up here where you have kind of equal area for the 2 sides. But why? Well, because this, yeah? Because that's where the blade is cut by the chalice, and that's where the chalice is cut by the blade. So it's really cool, the things that open up when you start working with geometry and sacred geometry. I mean, I'm like cruising around with my compass, and it has so much to teach. Like the heart chakra symbol, you see the 12 petals, right? But if you're going to draw that geometrically, you get your 12 by drawing 2 6s. And I think I'll do like a whole sacred geometry thing about the 6 and the 5 and Venus and the symbol of humanity and the symbol of the cosmos and how they relate, and some things that have been coming through. I was shown very clearly before I began this study, hey, sacred geometry will teach you astrology. And I said, well, what the heck does that mean? Whatever, I'm just going to go into it. And I've looked at a lot of people draw these pictures over time, but I've never done it myself. So it was really interesting just to dive into those mysteries, to see how here at the heart chakra, of course, it's like the above coming down, the below coming up, the way that it combines in balance, right, when it's functioning properly. And that was our goal last month, is to see what would keep it from doing so and clearing that mess out. Yeah, this is the practice for this Venus circle. On the way down, we clear the clutter. So what kept you from love? Yeah, and what kept you in a place of expressing tension, or the shielding you from receiving or being vulnerable, and all these different beautiful magics of the heart and the art of the heart and expressing emotion and such. You know, one thing, I liked drawing this yesterday with the 4 colors involved. Because for me it was this symbol of, yeah, all elements, right? All 4 elements are combining here in the heart chakra. And it's almost like the blue, which is the water, the heart, the red, which is the fire, the spirit, are kind of holding this container. They're the undivided chalice and blade, and they're like holding this container for the air and the earth to relate. And I drew it this way because, you know, to me, as I've expressed, I have in my own personal system different associations of the planets with the 7 chakras, and for me, Venus is the heart. And well, in the traditional systems, Venus rules Libra, air, and Taurus, earth. And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to show there. And so this month we descend into the Solar Plexus Chakra, and the gate, the entrance, was January 6th. So yesterday and this morning with my vision, I had my ceremony of removing the heart and now entering the study of what's keeping my solar plexus from being fully fired. Yeah. So here's the symbol for the Solar Plexus Chakra. And this is 10 petals, yeah? Well, 10 actually would come from drawing 2 5s. 5 being the pentagram or the pentagon, and this number that we see with Venus. Well, 5 is also the number of human. I mean, think about like the Vitruvian Man, the Da Vinci thing, right? And he wasn't the first one to go for that. Well, we have 5 appendages, yeah? And most of them have 5 branches. Fingers and toes, and the head is the other, the 5th, which is kind of the antenna for the above, but maybe somehow there's 5 petals there too. Anyway, 5 and 5 make the 10. And I almost see if 5 is the symbol of human, well, maybe 5 and 5 is also a different expression of the feminine and the masculine coming together. Who's to say? But here in the most traditional drawings of the solar plexus chakra, you have the downward pointing triangle. Now, it's kind of fiery and very bright, this yellow. In my personal system, the sun is the astronomical or astrological representative of the solar plexus energies. I feel like they're called solar for that reason, although that's not most of what I've seen in the traditional systems. Are there really traditional systems relating planets to chakras? It's hard to say, and there's many different views of that. Typically, you'll see the sun at the top. But if you've been following this 13 flower thing, for me, that's Jupiter. But I also have Jupiter in Aries, and Aries is said to be the head. And again, I think these should be very personal things. But for me, personally, the sun in the solar plexus, solar, the light. Those of us who live in Seattle, especially at this time of year, for me, I have to wonder, did I move there into the cloud city to find my own inner sun? Yeah. And that's where it lives, yeah, in the solar plexus, this burning heat and this flame that drives us when it's functioning properly. A very creative force, a place of will, a place of power, that kind of gut gnosis. Yeah, that gut has as many neurons as the mind does. You can jump out of the way of a bus that's coming to hit you. And it's like, well, how did I know my mind is really quick? No, that's not your mind, right? That's this mind, and it's a very real thing. There's this mind as well, yeah? But the solar plexus, this is this place of like a life force and a will. And to me, that's the sun. And it's incredibly giving when we allow ourselves to receive that energy. Yeah, and when we can draw it up from below, and we'll be talking about that much more as Venus begins her ascent later in the year, and kind of empowering this and restructuring this thing, reassembling, retrieving this thing, reorganizing and taking back the whole system from the root up as is traditionally done, but on the way down, clearing the clutter. So what this month we are asked to ask is keeping us from burning our fire. Yeah? My mom coughing in the other room. That's that thing. Like, what are we going to cough out that would keep us from feeling that, like, power of self and allowing to really serve our own will and align our will to divine will, I guess, would be a way to look into that. So, here's the solar plexus. Well, it's also this triangle pointing down, which is the chalice. Maybe I'm mixing kung fu's, esoteric kung fu's here, but why not? That's what we all do right on our search. But where's it pointing? It's pointing down into the earth, maybe drawing our power from our roots, from our feet even, being in touch with the soil. And maybe that's this energy of the participation between the masculine and the feminine and drawing from the below. I don't even have words for that clearly. Some of my favorite images of the chakras come from Aloria Weaver. And you can see these at aloriaweaver.com, and Aloria sells these amazing chakra banners with all of them. And she's just an incredible artist, and I really love the images she brought forth. So here is her heart chakra image, and you can see, of course, the 2 triangles here, but she's drawn it as you can see the flower of life inside and kind of the cube that's produced in the hexagon. Yeah, so there's a lot more information kind of coming from this beautiful image. And the many petals, the 12 petals, you can see kind of branching out. And we'll get into the solar plexus chakra. And here you can see this pyramid, yeah, which is the tetrahedron, the 4 triangles that make a perfect platonic solid. So not like the pyramids of Giza, right? Those are 4-sided, and really what they are is half of an octahedron, 8 sides, and that's for, I think, another discussion. But here we see this beautiful, perfect geometry of the tetrahedron, you know, which in some ways might be the simplest of the platonic solids. And I think that's an important image into this solar plexus chakra. Like, how can we actually just burn that fire without worrying what it means and just allowing it to move through? This word allowance, I really love. You know, we're very keen, I think, in the traditions these days of the awakening movements with this word surrender. And it's a very important word at this time, you know, and to allow ourselves to rise or whatever this may be. But allowance feels, in a sense, more profound to me. It's not like whatever you need to do, just do it, surrender, you know, and there's times for that for sure. But it's more of, well, this is in me, and I'm going to allow it to happen. I'm going to allow it to come out, you know. I'll allow myself to be born, as traumatic as that can be, you know, from the beginning, whatever. So I think that's a really wonderful word for me this month of, well, how can I allow my own will and my own power center to come through? And I speak about this month, and I remember that I've been drawing power animal cards for each of these Venus gates. So as we descend into the solar plexus, for me, I've got power animal oracle card iPhone deck, right? Stephen Farmer did these, and I bought them because Eric Nez did the art. I just love Eric's art, and they're very cool here. So, all right, da 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 da. What do we have? Horse, freedom. And it says, you always have a choice. Let go of the illusion that you're somehow a victim. Know that you always have a choice in any and every situation. Take responsibility for the consequences of that choice and stop holding on to any beliefs that you have to somehow suffer through or endure the circumstances of that choice. Once you fully allow this reality, you will automatically shift into experiencing greater control over your life. You can choose to do whatever you want, to wander about or to stay in place, to go forward, backward, or even sideways, to be dependent or autonomous, to continue doing what you're presently doing or to alter your course, perhaps to pursue Spirit's calling. Your soul has made a choice to incarnate into the body and being of the one you are. Once you surrender to that fact, it becomes even more difficult to play the victim, and your ultimate trust in life becomes magnified. You can choose to hear and respond to that inner voice, or to quell it and run from it. So choose. Do what makes your soul sing, and do it with gusto and passion. Stephen Farmer from his Power Animal cards, with a beautiful drawing by Mr. Eric Nez of the horse. And maybe I should cut one of those in here because this is all glared out and whatnot. Yeah, that's just not happening. Wow, what an incredible card for the solar plexus, yeah? Gusto and passion. Let's remember that this is a Leo-Venus cycle. You know, and Leo, gusto, and passion, these are beautiful words. And the solar plexus, you know, one thing that really came through for me in that was choice, allowance. He didn't say that in that word. But again, like surrender, there's a little bit of victim in that. Life shit happens, life's happening to me. Clients all the time will ask, hey, when's this Saturn cycle end? When's this Pluto cycle end? And I say, yeah, you know, Saturn's wondering the same thing. Pluto's wondering the same thing. Because on some level, it's relationship. Yeah? So when are we going to end? The fear of it, the victim nature of it happening to us, and start participating and happening with it and making it a happening, as they said back in the day. And I think that's really important here. Can we let our light shine? Right? Simply because it's our right to do so. Is it a choice? And what would keep us from making that choice? What are the traditions that have, in so many ways, taught us to be small and taught us not to shine that inner light? And I love that the sun's shining on us now, because it's been a little bit here where I am today in Monterey. Yeah. Leo traditionally ruled by the sun. The sun, for me, solar plexus. So in a sense, this is a very, in my personal practice, this is a very key gate and month for the Venus cycle. Yeah. What is keeping the goddess, the feminine, Venus, the artistic, the love, Venus, you know, the dance of life? What is keeping her, it, us, you, me, from being light, from being on fire, from being rich, from sharing that beauty? And I'm loving this horse card. And what's keeping us from just galloping forth, you know? So that's what we're looking to clear this month. And we can look astrologically to see, well, where are we going to get some assistance in that realm? So here was the gate, January 6, 2016. It's 4:53:54 p.m. in the West Coast in Seattle. I have this chart run. I'm gonna go to 4:53:53, so you can see the moon here was just approaching Venus and then Saturn. Obviously, this could not be seen, right? It was in the southern hemisphere sky. It could not be seen up here, and I should look for some pictures from down below because I bet you there's some really amazing sights of this triple conjunction. And this chart features some other really incredible conjunctions. Here's Jupiter at the North Node in Virgo. Okay, here's the Sun and Pluto. Very close. It was the day before when the Sun made its annual exact alignment to Pluto. Here's Mercury Retrograde. Mercury stationed retrograde on January 5th in the sign of Aquarius. And this Venus-Saturn, Moon-Venus-Saturn conjunction is square to Neptune. Many other things are happening here. There's a bit of a trine to Uranus, more of one to Vesta in Aries. And Mars had recently ingressed Scorpio. Mars will be in Scorpio for this entire month of this Venus gate and for the next as well, I believe. Mars traditionally ruled Scorpio, so in some senses the masculine energy has come home. Scorpio, when the Libra scales come, after twilight into the darkness, I think Mars in that maybe masculine energy is helping to hold some space and be that warrior for the goddess to go down and in, perhaps. This is Juno. Strange kind of glyph on this software, Sky Engine for Juno, but this is her, goddess of relationship. And so here's Mars kind of now cohabiting, being in the same sign as Juno. That interests me very much. But I'm really kind of interested in this dynamic here of Sun and Pluto, Mercury retrograde, Jupiter at the North Node, and obviously this triple conjunction in Sagittarius squaring Neptune and Pisces. So where to begin? Well, let's look at Mercury retrograde. And just briefly, if you want to learn a lot about Mercury and his cycles, the fella, I think, in modern times is Gary Caton, who you can find at dreamastrologer.com. And if you've been following along with the 13 flower thing, you've seen an interview with Gary and myself. And Gary's done some amazing work recently on the Venus-Mars thing. He's been doing videos or podcast episodes, the Goddess Astrology podcast, for 8 years, keyed to these Moon-Venus gates, and has now recently shifted his podcast to what's called the Hermetic Astrology podcast, which is free, at least the first half every episode. Highly recommended. Gary's an incredible astrologer, man, teacher, student, friend. And Gary's really bringing some cool and key information about Mercury fourth. He's really revolutionized the way I personally work with the Mercury cycle. But one thing that he's led me to, and this was, I saw before this, Shamanic Astrology, Daniel Gemario teaches this, and that's a school that you might know I study in, that Mercury does his 3 retrogrades every year, 3 weeks, at a time, 3 times a year. This is the Mercury Mudra, 3. Well, he does them in the same sign for the most part every year. I'm sorry, in the same element. So last year the retrogrades were Aquarius, Gemini, Libra. The same thing with the years before. And now we are shifting into the Earth element for the Mercury cycles. So Mercury stationed retrograde on January 5th, 2016 in Aquarius, okay? But just in days here, he will be, and let's just look at that. There it is, January 8th, maybe even January 7th, maybe even tonight, into Capricorn, okay? And he will then station direct on January 25th. And let's look at that. Mercury goes direct. It'll be where here on January 25th, conjunct Pluto. Okay, look at that, 1455 Capricorn, January 25th. I'm just going to go to right now. Actually, let's go back to this chart we were looking at, January 6th. So, well, where does he station direct? Right where Pluto and the Sun are today, basically. And certainly right where the Sun was 2 days ago when Mercury stationed retrograde. All right, well, that's really interesting. And what Gary will show you, if you look at his work, and he's beginning to write some books about this, is that where Mercury reaches what's called his maximum elongation, and this in this cycle was December 28th, as far as he gets from the Sun, as high and bright as he gets in the western sky, where Mercury is conjunct the Sun, which in this cycle is January 14th here, and then where Mercury eventually will be at his height in the morning sky after he stations direct, and that's February 8th, and he'll be right with Venus at that time, Pluto. They happen in the same degrees of the zodiac. And Gary will show you how this is the as above, so below, as below, so above of the Hermetic wisdom, as the emerald tablets of Thoth. He'll show you also how that's not actually doing service in that kind of watered down version that we often express that as above, so below to the true mysteries that are revealed in those tablets. And I have a piece about this too that you can find on the movies page of morethan-astrology.com, which is Don't Get Played by Mercury Retrograde, Play Along. And a practice to work within these Mercury Retrograde times. Because, you know, the whole, well, your computer's going to explode, don't try to make an internet video, what am I doing here? Don't travel, oh my gosh, I'm taking a plane in a couple of days. You know, sign no contracts, whatever. While there is some reason to some of that, there's also a lot of ridiculous superstition and a lot of fear-mongering and a lot of, for me, like really resentful anger and ridiculous behavior towards my greatest guide, who is Mercury. So I just don't really go there. And it's learning how to give to receive, learning how to participate through our intention, through our will, allowing this to happen rather than surrendering fear-based, to the whole thing. And maybe Mercury is going to help us in this cycle. Maybe this is a wonderful time where Venus is descending into the solar plexus with Mercury retrograde. For a lot of us who are practicing kind of fear-based Mercury retrograde practices, to look into why we're doing that. What that came from a book, or how is that, So I also had a roll of the astro dice before I began this, and those dice are a lot of fun. And I rolled a Aquarius North Node in the 10th house. So heading into new ways of doing work. And I think that's coming through a little bit in this video. That was my intention when I hit start. That I want to just do this in some way that I have been doing. I think that started kind of falling off last month, of looking at all these different dates of alignments, and just instead more kind of sharing and wrapping. And while it might feel a little more tangential, whatever, there's a reason why I call myself Gemini Brett, and I'm drinking a lot of tea and a lot of pu'er. So let me try to bring this all in. Mercury starts in Aquarius. You see, he's been doing his cycles in the air signs for the last 2 years, and now he's transitioning it. Most of this cycle will be in Capricorn. The 3 key dates that I showed you there, Capricorn around 23 to 25 degrees, honing in on that zone of the zodiac where you can see Pallas Athena at the time of this Venus moon gate, goddess of wisdom. Capricorn wisdom. What is Capricorn wisdom? And this is a very important question. Please remember, or let me tell you, that this cycle, this August 2015 till March 2017 Venus cycle, is the Leo archetype. That's where she was born, the goddess pursuing the Leo energies. And she comes from January 2014 to August 2015, having studied, explored, released, retained, regained, becoming strong in her Capricorn census Venus. And so this gate right now, there's a lot of this Capricorn symbolism. We'll see this next month too, at the Venus descent into the sacral chakra. And it's really interesting to me that, in a sense, we're coming into the solar plexus chakra in like the middle of winter, not even the middle, the beginning of winter, but really long nights. Well, here's the sun in Capricorn, and even more so conjunct Pluto. Yeah, the dark one. Pluto, who I like to think also as Persephone, who I see not abducted by her uncle Pluto and victimized. Okay, this is how that story is often told. But having chosen to go below, to bring seasons to Earth, to engage with her own underworld processes, her own evolution, by looking into her own shadow, her own darkness, this kind of thing, and becoming queen of it. You see what I mean? And some of the older stories, she was Kore also to the Greek. Well, that name comes from Africa, and those stories weren't written, right? So the way they've been told to me, I'm not sure if that's the way they were told or not. But it reads, and this is weird because I am, but it reads like this kind of extraterrestrial invasion story where some beings were coming to take our planet, and Kore decided to descend into the underworld because she knew when she did, winter would come to the Earth. And this winter would make the Earth unattractive, or perhaps even uninhabitable to the invading forces. That's how it feels to me. And see, it's this great gift of that goddess who decides, like, I will bring seasons to the Earth to protect it. Well, what do seasons also give us? What does night and day give us? And this opportunity to kind of cyclically deal with our own evolutionary experience, our own waking and sleeping and rising and falling and all of that. And it's really important. So Capricorn, it teaches us this in so many ways of, well, can I climb from those longest nights? We're Sagittarius, and we don't often think about this. Late Sagittarius is just as much winter solstice as is early Capricorn. Yeah. So this place where Moon and Venus and Saturn got together now, they're kind of, that arrow is pointing in some senses towards the south of due east, towards the winter. And Saturn traditionally, ruled Capricorn and Aquarius alike. Yeah. And so there's some sense of this important meeting today of Moon and Venus huddled up with Saturn to say, in a sense, remember what you learned during your last cycle, during your Capricorn cycle. And remember how you allowed yourself to go into the winter of your soul. I see this also in the Sun-Pluto conjunction at the time of the solar plexus gate. Allow yourself to aim that arrow not away from yourself, but down within, and go and see what's keeping you from fully shining, and then what's keeping you from creating. And we'll look at all the sacral and the root in the coming months, and allow that death and rebirth so you can rise once again. Yeah. What is the philosophy of that? I mean, for me, this is really important. Scorpio, after Libra, after balance, the veil gets thin, things are dying, the leaves are falling, and it's just rich in that energy. Los Dias de los Muertos. And, Sagittarius, we have this month to kind of think about it. Why does stuff die? Why does Persephone descend? Why are there seasons? Philosophy, the vision quest, you see. And so Venus and the Moon coming together in this beautiful sign of Sagittarius, kind of engaging us with the philosophy of this cleansing process, the vision quest to go within and to really find our fire. Yeah, but this is the time to clear the stuff that doesn't let it burn. And then later, in some months from now, we'll be coming back up to really take that back. And it will be interesting to see where Venus aligns at that time. I'm not going to talk about that today. So Mercury's like, oh, yeah, I'm Aquarius. Wait a second. I'm heading back into Capricorn. Sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. Venus will ingress Capricorn during this month, okay, of her clearing the clutter of the solar plexus chakra. This is January 23rd, 2016. 123, 123, okay. Well, that's beautiful, but if you've studied sacred geometry at all, or the pentagon and Fibonacci sequence and the golden number and phi, well, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, on and on, right? So that just brings to me some essence of, oh, this is Venus. And I think that's something I'll kind of try to bring through more in a sacred geometry teaching later on during the cycle. We'll look at what's going down on 123 when Venus ingresses Capricorn. Mercury is retrograded now to join Pluto. The Sun has entered a few days before Aquarius, and now Pallas Athena follows her in. And it's the full moon. Yeah, the Leo full moon. So let's look at the moon cycle. I'm just going to go from today. New moon, January 9th, 2016. Okay? Conjunct Pluto. Planting seeds of Capricorn intentions. And by then, Mercury will have retrograded himself back into Capricorn. So this is Saturday, Saturn's day, in one of Saturn's signs, Capricorn. All this going down, setting seeds of Capricorn intention. So where is our authority? How are we devoted to bringing a new way? In a sense, that can be very Aquarian, but how are we devoted to basically practical application for the good of the many? And then natural wisdom. I mean, so Capricorn wisdom, I mentioned that before, but my favorite story was told to me by Eric Nez, and I've told this before, but it was Grandma Agnes, of the 13 grandmothers, and that's an archetype Daniel Gemario and Kaylin Costello of shamanic astrology have brought forth for Capricorn that I love so much, the Council of Grandmothers. And so Grandma Agnes is at Beloved, as I'm told, the festival in Oregon. She does a water blessing, and then she looks out at the crowd and thousands of people, and she says, I hear you all speaking about saving the earth, and I love that so much, but now I see all these plastic cups. What, you didn't know you were going to drink today? I came to a festival and it's hot, and I figured I'd have some water and maybe some tea and maybe that once a year a cup of coffee. So here's my cup, and she broke out her silver cup, which probably looked cooler than that one, but reusable. And it was kind of just this natural wisdom, not really even like attacking people, right? Just reminding you, hey, think before you drink, right? And what about really like aligning our experience our expression of life to our prayers, to our desires for the earth, yeah, Capricorn, for the tribe, Capricorn. And what is that wisdom of the elder? And so I think there's a lot of that in this month. And I love that with Venus finding this gate into the solar plexus chakra, allowing that power, that will to come through. She's with Saturn in Sagittarius, where he'll be for some time. And there's this reminder of, well, you come from Capricorn. I know that flavor. Let's bring some structure, Saturn, into the vision quest, Sagittarius. Yeah? So there's a reason when we use this philosophical quest into where do we come from, where are we going, what are we doing, how can we make a better way, well, that we can bring it into form. Yeah, and Capricorn is about this in so many ways. So I love this party that's happening, this planet party that's happening in Capricorn at the Capricorn new moon this Saturday, Saturn's Day, January 9th. And we'll look at, well, the first quarter moon, January 16th. And that's moon in Aries. All right. So there's something about the tension of individuality, the tension of the spark of the fire, to those intentions we set to key ourselves into the natural wisdom. The tension of going out, pioneering, doing something new, to the intentions of aligning ourselves to traditions. Yeah, well, think about that too. And think about Venus in Sagittarius meeting Saturn at this gate, exploring, clearing the clutter of the solar plexus. Well, are there traditions that would keep us from just shining our light? Yeah? And how can we go into, and we need that fire. Sagittarius for me is the smoke that rises from the burning, the roaring flames of Leo. But those start with Aries, the spark. Yeah. And the sparks are carried by the smoke, and it begins again and again. But when does it get out of control? When is it a full raging forest fire? And obviously we want to prevent that. Yeah. So when we're kind of bucking against traditions to bring our fire back, well, let's make sure we do that in a healthy way. And let's make sure we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Or the bathwater at all, because maybe we're going to need to put some fires out if fire gets out of control. And when can we be like a little too warrior and too independent in our desire to protect the tribe and go so rogue that we're just doing anything but that, you know? So some of the week of tension in my own personal moon game, that's the second week of the month, the first quarter square month, well, it kind of begins then. In Aries, this is a sign of Mars, and Mars in his other sign, Scorpio, with Juno, asteroid goddess of relationship. Venus is now distancing herself from Saturn, you see. So are we willing to go into the depths, to the true intimacy of relationship, to charge in there, which also requires us to kind of like break free of some of these traditions, especially the old traditions. Look at Mercury Retrograde and going back, maybe even looking into our own individual past, into the past of the world at Pluto. You see what I'm saying? How has it been dark? How has it been shamanic? And how have those old restrictions helped us release? How have we found the light at the end of the dark tunnel? Yeah. How do we bring the sun back from midnight, back from winter solstice? Full moon in the sign of Leo. Yeah? 4 degrees Leo. I would love to read the Sabian symbol for that, but I don't think I have my Sabian book with me. Or maybe I do. Nah. The America's Astrology and America's Secret Destiny. Let's not read from that one just yet. Alright, we don't need that. You know, there's a word that came in when I was reading Stephen Farmer's Horse. Sovereignty. And remember, this is a Leo-Venus cycle, right? Sovereignty, honor, valor, chivalry, courage, creation, manifestation, leadership, radiance, all these beautiful Leo words. But there is this word sovereignty that's so important to me. And on a spiritual level, you know, declaring that, no, I am not a victim to you. I don't care what's going on politically. I'm tuned to it. I want to listen. I want to see how that reflects my own experience, my own shadow, so I can clean that within, to clean the world without. But I am not your citizen in some senses. You see what I'm saying? I mean, and so some people are practicing that on a very physical level of removing their land from registration, no driver's license, license plate, all that sovereignty movement. That's cool. That's not my thing personally, but really going for spiritual sovereignty, like making strong devotions and statements that I am free of that mess that I have felt and been trained to believe I am bound to. We see Pallas Athena, wisdom in Aquarius at this time, the sun in Aquarius. There's this huge sense of freedom. What can you free yourself from? And how is the moon kind of supercharging that from the sign of Leo? And I love that, this Venus cycle, well, she began this month going into the solar plexus, clearing the clutter in that fire of Sagittarius. But by the time that the Leo moon, the archetype of this full 19-month Venus cycle comes online, this is one of the 2 times where she will see a Leo full moon. This is the descent one. There'll be one for the ascent as well. Well, look, she's in the very first degree of Capricorn. Yeah. So there's something, again, about her rooting herself in her experience from her last journey, January 2014 till August 2015. So she can be empowered to see the full reflection of freedom and the glory of this Leo full moon. And it reflects, well, how are we illuminating now Capricorn seeds that were maybe tensed by some of the Aquarius first quarter moon week in that energy? All this time, and this is when it gets most exact, Jupiter conjunct North Node in Virgo. This is huge. North Node, the direction of our collective consciousness, the forward calling. Jupiter, the conductor of the celestial symphony. Yeah. You can see Mercury with Pluto, Mercury retrograde at this time too. So it's a very key chart for this cycle, I find. Mars and Juno almost exact. And, well, this is what is your practice? What is your yoga? What is your devotion? Capricorn, for me, the trunk of the tree, the structure, it's supporting the thing. Also the roots that drink, hopefully from the deepest waters. But also, Virgo is the leaf. It reaches for the light of spirit. It does the photosynthesis, the inner work. In this devotion, in this practice, in this yoga. So if things are crazy this month and all months, what is your practice? What is my practice? Will things be crazy? Sure. We're in full-on Saturn Neptune square land. And you'll hear a lot of astrologers speaking about the Saturn-Neptune square. I recently put up a video with a fantastic genius wizard of Seattle, Rick Merlin Levine, that I highly recommend you check out. But I think in this cycle, I'm just loving the fire of this Leo full moon. And for me in my moon game, that's the time of illumination. We start understanding why there was a week of tension to the intentions we set. There's mindfulness. We begin to shift and have that right to move into a state of wisdom. And that week really begins with third quarter moon, which is Scorpio, conjunct Juno, conjunct Mars, sextile Venus, Pluto, Mercury, who has now gone direct 6 days before. This is the last day of January. I'm not sure what the weird Catholic holiday is for that one. If I find out, I'll make a podcast. And South Node with Chiron. I mean, I want to not go into so many of these things, but I want you to notice these things for sure. And so many of you know more about astrology than I do, or students like I am, whatever. So really look into some of these alignments on these charts. What do they mean to you? What does it that mean that Venus is coming to meet Pluto? And actually on the next Venus gate in the descent into the sacral chakra, well, look at this. This will be Moon finding Venus on February 5th. Mercury's right there. She's right with Pluto. So, but let's go back to this chart for today. So that's the moon cycle that's coming up, the Capricorn moon cycle, Capricorn new moon, Aries first quarter, Leo full moon, Scorpio last quarter, and I'll probably be sharing more about that. Maybe new moon time. I'll try to get something written. Back here, Sun conjunct Pluto. This happens once a year, especially in Capricorn. That's not really like Pluto sauce in some ways, but he is like the darkest night. She is Persephone who has descended. So there's something here to remind us, like, joy and cheer and that whole thing in the season, that's fine. But also, is that a bit of a distraction from the seasonal perspective of going into our gray, hibernating, going into our cave, seeing into self? And I think, this quest, this Venus quest, is about that in so many ways. Are we willing to go there? And I would say that's kind of like actually empowered by this alignment of Sun and Pluto. That doesn't mean it's easy, right? People often ask me, when does it get easier? And I said, no, you get easier, we get easier, right? In allowance. And again, that's the key word for me right now. Also practice, devotion, yoga, which comes, as Rick Levine taught me in that Saturn Neptune video interview, it comes from, etymologically, from the word yoke, that the oxen pull. So what is your work? What is your practice? What is your sacred work? It's very key, and Jupiter's really leading us there. South Node in Pisces, well, I think we're cleaning up stuff from the whole age of Pisces, which is like 2,000 years. I'll be speaking much more about that as time moves on. But there's one thing about Saturn and about this time of the year. I'm sorry, well, Saturn too, but Sagittarius, and maybe especially Saturn and Sagittarius, well, what are belief systems? What are religiosity? If in the month of Sagittarius, as I like to suggest, it's now, why do things die? Right? Why are there seasons? Well, there's also, oh my gosh, we're going into the darkness, the darkest night, we're going into the winter, we're going into the cave. How do we make it through? Somebody get the scriptures, roll out the scrolls, what prayer must we speak? So there can be, and that can be beautiful, but there can also be this religiosity. And that's really alive in this Saturn-Neptune square. What are your belief systems? Because believing is not seeking, right? How can we actually seek and find if we're limited to our reality tunnels that were given to us, not by self, but by other? And those are signposts along the way to us finding our own way of doing this, our own quest, you see. But some of this kind of energy in the Saturn-Neptune square, which obviously Moon and Venus at the Solar Plexus gate align to, I would say are about beliefs and even religiosity. But my religion was the cult of science. Seeing is believing. God is dead, that whole trip. What was yours? This is one thing we're looking into. How does the traditions of our belief systems, keep us from being fully alive in our will center? Massive question, yeah? And maybe I'll leave it there. I mean, there's so much. Obviously, astrology is just endless. But I will say actually one more thing, that during this week, I'm going to look at the full moon, during this month, you'll find that the South Node in the nodes move retrograde is getting closer and closer, and here's the third quarter moon, to Chiron. Here's the next Venus moon gate, which is the sacral chakra, and here's South Node in Chiron. Closer and closer. Here's the full moon next month. Yeah, so we'll be speaking about that more and more the following new moon. It's coming on. There's a sense to me, South Node and Chiron coming together. Chiron, deep shamanic healing, to past South Node, Pisces. When we talk about victim nature and stuff, that's some of the shadow available in Pisces. There's some of the selfless sacrifice is the only route to the heavens. Well, if we're doing that to get to heaven, it's not selfless. And also, when are we so sacrificial that we would, nail ourselves to some cross to save everyone else? And how has that taken us into some difficult places? And what about all the murder for the cross or for the other elements in these religious wars that have really been nuts these last couple of thousand years? The Crusades, which are obviously very much happening today as well. And then what is some of the beauty and some of the glory that came to us through the Pisces age? I'm going to be interviewing one of my teachers, Daniel Gemario, the founder of Shamanic Astrology. Very soon we're going to start putting out these monthly videos about further explorations of Shamanic Astrology. And that's one question where I warned him. I'm going to ask, what is the glory, what is the beauty of the Pisces age? You see, because Chiron is in so many ways the sacred wound, but also the greatest teacher, the greatest mentor. And we're going to kind of be asked to look into this. So if you're kind of a reincarnation model person, what are the last couple thousand years? Because we're shifting now into the age of Aquarius, And so when we change cultures, which that is, we also have to access our history of where we've been in the previous cycle. When is the shift exactly? Is there a calendar date? I don't know, and I'm going to be bringing some of that precession cycle, age of Aquarius, galactic alignment information forward to as we move along here. But for now, I think I want to move along. Allowance. What is keeping you from just allowing your fire to burn brightly? Why not let yourself shine? This is your friendly astronaut, Gemini Brett, signing off. I see your light and it's a lovely thing. And I will see you out in the brightness of space. Love and planets. Let the sun shine in and out. I'm out.